Before you keep scrolling, let me ask you this question. Do you really think you understand women? Most men don't. And it's not their fault. There's a truth hidden beneath charm, smiles, and affection. A truth even society refuses to speak aloud. Schopenhauer, the 19th century philosopher known for his brutal honesty, observed something that still shocks today. Women, he argued, operate on instincts most men never notice. Beneath friendliness, kindness, or flirtation lies a drive to secure safety, influence, and advantage. And while this sounds cynical, it's not about morality, it's about survival. Think about it. How often do we project our ideals, honesty, loyalty, fairness onto women and relationships, expecting the same rules to apply? Schopenhauer called this mistake one of the biggest traps a man can fall into. He claimed women are big children all their lives, emotionally intelligent in some ways, but focused on immediate advantage in ways most men fail to recognize. It's a perspective that challenges everything modern culture tells us about equality, romance, and trust. Now, before you dismiss this as outdated philosophy, consider evolution hasn't paused. Men and women are wired differently, and these differences shape behavior. Men often pursue status, resources, and long-term goals. Women, Schopenhauer argued, navigate social landscapes with subtlety, charm, and relational acuity. That's not evil, it's strategy encoded in human psychology. And when ignored, it can cost men everything: heartbreak, frustration, even their self-respect. Here's the kicker: society rewards these instincts. Women have historically used social intelligence, emotional influence, and strategic behavior to thrive. And men who remain unaware, they fall for illusions of equality, transparency, and mutual fairness, and pay the price. But it's not about fear or cynicism. Awareness is power. Recognizing patterns allows men to navigate relationships with clarity without falling into repeated mistakes. It's about seeing the game, understanding the rules, and protecting yourself, not controlling anyone else. By now, you might feel a mix of skepticism and unease. That's normal. This isn't a lecture on hatred. It's a revelation of patterns most men never see. Let me tell you something Schopenhauer observed that will change the way you see women forever. This may even be your lifesaver. Most men will never see it coming, yet it happens every day. The truth is, women often act in ways men don't consciously notice, ways that can determine success, failure, or heartbreak long before any words are spoken. Schopenhauer called this pattern instinctive. Beneath charm, laughter, and affection, there lies a strategy, an ancient drive shaped by survival and evolution. Women, he argued, have been wired to secure safety, influence, and advantage, often unconsciously. And men, expecting fairness, honesty, or transparency, often stumble straight into it. Think about it. In human relationships, actions speak louder than words. Compliments, attentiveness, or emotional warmth are rarely random. They're signals. Schopenhauer argued that women's intellect is often applied instrumentally to relationships, social hierarchies, and emotional influence. Men, on the other hand, often invest their intellect toward status, resources, or long-term goals. When these different strategies intersect, confusion, frustration, and misreading occur. This doesn't mean women are manipulative in a malicious sense. It's about strategy, coded behavior shaped by evolution. Schopenhauer even compared it to survival tactics in the animal kingdom. Just as predators and prey act instinctively to survive, human beings, both men and women, navigate social dynamics to protect, advance, or secure themselves. The difference: men often miss the signals because they're looking for equality and transparency, rather than patterns and instinct. And society does nothing to prepare men. Movies, media, and social norms promote ideals, romance, fairness, unconditional affection. Few openly discuss these patterns. Men often internalize failure, blame themselves, or assume misunderstanding is their fault. Schopenhauer's observations cut through the illusion. Awareness is the difference between repeated heartbreak and understanding human behavior on a deeper level. Modern psychology confirms aspects of this too. Studies in evolutionary psychology and social neuroscience suggest men and women often have different approaches to risk, trust, and social navigation. This isn't about superiority or morality, it's about strategy. Ignoring it leaves men vulnerable, unaware, and frustrated. Recognizing it gives clarity and control without resentment. Here's the hard truth. Attraction and influence are rarely neutral. Women often excel at subtle persuasion, emotional intelligence, and reading social cues, tools they've refined unconsciously for millennia. Men who ignore these dynamics repeat mistakes, misunderstand intentions, and risk heartbreak or manipulation. Schopenhauer called this one of life's harsh realities. Knowledge of it is rare, but invaluable. How do you feel now? Discomfort? Disbelief? That's natural, because it's the price you need to pay for knowing what most men aren't taught to recognize. Now, let's go deeper. Here's something most men don't realize. Intellect and attraction are rarely separate. Schopenhauer argued that women's intelligence is often intertwined with strategy. Unlike the idealized intellect we imagine, pure reason, detached and objective, he claimed women's thinking is deeply relational. Every thought, every decision is filtered through a lens of social and emotional consequences. In other words, women often calculate outcomes not for abstract achievement, but for influence, security, and survival. Consider how subtle this can be. A compliment given at the right moment, a disagreement handled in a way that never escalates, a smile that opens doors or closes them. These are not random, they are instincts sharpened over millennia. Schopenhauer didn't frame this as deceit. He framed it as evolutionary necessity. In his eyes, women's intellect shines brightest when it serves relational advantage. Now contrast this with typical male logic. Linear, outcome-driven, focused on status, resources, or long-term legacy. Men analyze, plan, and project. Women, Schopenhauer observed, often analyze too, but the metrics are different. Influence, perception, and relational equilibrium take precedence. This isn't manipulation in the popular sense, it's awareness of cause and effect in a social ecosystem where missteps can have long-term consequences. What's fascinating, and often unsettling for men, is how this interplay can feel invisible. You might think you are leading, influencing, or in control, only to discover that the dynamics were quietly shaped around you. A choice you thought was mutual may have been gently steered. A decision you assumed was yours alone may have been influenced by a network of subtle cues, emotional signals, and calculated responses. Schopenhauer saw this pattern and warned that ignoring it invites repeated frustration. Importantly, he did not argue that women are superior or morally different. He simply described a pattern of behavior rooted in survival. Men can see it, understand it, and even anticipate it, but only if they shed assumptions about transparency and fairness. In this light, intellect is not about who thinks faster or solves more complex problems. It's about seeing connections, reading environments, and leveraging subtlety to navigate life's relational web. This realization changes the rules of engagement. What looks like charm, intuition, or emotional expression may actually be a precise tool, honed by instinct and social intelligence. And the more a man ignores it, the more likely he is to misread intentions, misjudge trust, and miscalculate his place in the relationship hierarchy. Recognizing this doesn't make relationships cynical. It makes them informed. It allows men to approach attraction and partnership with awareness, protecting themselves from repeated mistakes and unnecessary heartbreak. It shifts the lens from idealism to clarity, without reducing intimacy, connection, or genuine affection. And here's the subtle pivot most men miss. Once you understand the interplay between intellect and instinct, you start noticing patterns not just in attraction, but in desire, influence, and social dynamics. Every conversation, every decision, every subtle gesture is layered with meaning. Understanding it isn't about control. It's about seeing the invisible rules that govern human behavior. Suddenly, what seemed like random interactions, surprises, or conflicts are no longer mysterious. The game is visible, and once it's visible, the question shifts. How do you respond when instinct, strategy, and emotion collide? There's a force most men never recognize, one that subtly shapes every interaction, every glance, every choice they make. Schopenhauer observed that attraction isn't just about physical beauty or shared interests. It's a complex interplay of instinct, perception, and influence. Women, he argued, are often acutely aware of this dynamic, whether consciously or not. Their instincts guide them toward security, compatibility, and advantage, but they present it wrapped in charm, warmth, and connection. Consider this. Desire is not always straightforward. A compliment, a smile, even silence can carry weight far beyond what men realize. Schopenhauer believed that women use relational intelligence as a tool to navigate these currents. It's not manipulation in a petty sense. It's navigation, a way to secure outcomes that align with instinctual drives. And men who ignore these signals often misinterpret them, assuming transparency where there is strategy or honesty where there is instinctual calculation. The consequences are subtle but profound. Misreading desire can lead to heartbreak, frustration, or misalignment of expectations. Men may feel confused, questioning their value or intentions. Schopenhauer's point was clear. Understanding these forces is not about cynicism, it's about awareness. Recognizing the invisible currents of attraction allows men to participate consciously rather than being swept along blindly. This extends to emotional influence as well. Schopenhauer argued that women often shape their environments subtly, guiding choices and behaviors through relational acuity. A disagreement may be softened, a decision subtly influenced, or a situation nudged in a particular direction, all without overt confrontation. To the unaware, it appears natural. To the aware, it's strategy at work. The pattern is ancient, rooted in survival, but visible once the lens of observation is applied. And here's where it becomes life-altering for men who see it. Desire is never purely physical, nor entirely rational. It's emotional, strategic, and instinctive. When intellect, attraction, and influence intersect, misunderstanding can escalate quickly. A man may think he's acting logically, while the relational currents around him subtly shape the outcome. Schopenhauer's insight was brutal in its clarity. Ignoring these dynamics is costly. But understanding them changes everything. It doesn't remove connection, intimacy, or love. It illuminates the rules that have always been operating beneath the surface. Men gain clarity, predictability, and insight into behaviors that otherwise seem mysterious or confusing. Awareness doesn't control women. It gives men a map to navigate the landscape of desire and emotional influence safely. And now, here's the critical shift most men miss. Once you see these patterns, you start to notice them everywhere, not just in romance, but in friendships, workplaces, and social interactions. Every subtle glance, every carefully chosen word, every emotional gesture begins to make sense. You start seeing the threads that bind decisions, influence, and desire together. The question is no longer whether you understand women. It's whether you're willing to see the game clearly. Because seeing it clearly is the difference between repeated mistakes and conscious navigation, between frustration and strategy, between heartbreak and insight. And when you understand these forces fully, the real question becomes unavoidable. If desire, intellect, and strategy collide so consistently, how can a man protect himself, succeed, and thrive in a world where these forces are constantly at play? By now, you've seen patterns most men never notice. The subtle strategies, instinctive drives, and emotional intelligence that Schopenhauer observed long ago, still at work today. Attraction, desire, influence, they're not random. They are layered, intertwined, and guided by instincts honed over millennia. Understanding them doesn't make relationships cynical, it makes them navigable. It gives clarity where most men operate in confusion. Here's the hard truth. Most men enter relationships blind, relying on idealism and assumption. They expect transparency, fairness, and emotional honesty. Yet human nature often operates on instinct, strategy, and subtle influence. This mismatch is why heartbreak, frustration, and repeated mistakes happen. Schopenhauer's insight is simple. Awareness is survival. Knowledge is protection. Seeing the invisible rules gives you control over what most men experience as chaos. But what does this mean in practice? It doesn't mean distrust or detachment. It means observation, reflection, and conscious engagement. It means noticing patterns in behavior, understanding emotional currents, and seeing when desire and intellect are in play. Once you can recognize these dynamics, your decisions, your relationships, and even your life trajectory shift dramatically. You stop falling into traps that keep repeating because you understand the forces that shape them. And there's more. This clarity extends beyond romance. In friendships, work, and social interactions, the same instincts and strategies apply. Recognizing them gives you an edge, not to manipulate, but to navigate life with awareness and confidence. Schopenhauer's work is a lens, a tool to see what others overlook. Once you see it, the landscape changes completely. So, what now? You've gained insight few men ever will. The next step is simple but powerful. Apply it. Observe, reflect, and act with understanding. Protect yourself from patterns that repeat. Engage consciously rather than blindly. The world is no longer opaque. You can see the game clearly, and clarity is power. If this series has opened your eyes even a little, here's something important. Knowledge grows when shared. If you want more insights into human behavior, psychology, and the truths most people ignore, make sure you hit subscribe. This isn't just another channel, it's a space where uncomfortable truths are explored, where patterns are revealed, and where you learn to navigate life smarter. Subscribing ensures you won't miss the next revelations that could change the way you see the world and yourself. Remember, awareness is rare. Seeing the game is even rarer. Don't let it pass you by. The rules are rarely what they seem, but now you can play consciously.